Picture London in the summer of 666. It's the biggest city in Britain, home to around 300,000 to 400,000 people, making it one of the largest in the Western world. But it's not the grand modern place we know today. No, this London is a chaotic maze of narrow, winding streets crammed with wooden houses that lean over each other like they're whispering secrets. These buildings, called tenements, are made of timber and pitch, highly flammable, and they're packed so tight that in some alleys, you could reach out your window and touch your neighbor's hand across the way. The city is still inside its old Roman walls, covering about 700 acres, with only 8 narrow gates for everyone to squeeze through. Inside those walls live about 80,000 people, a quarter of London's total population, mostly traders, merchants, and workers. The air is thick with smoke from chimneys, the stench from open sewers, and the noise of carts rumbling over cobblestones. John Evelyn, a writer at the time, called it a wooden, northern, and inartificial congestion of houses, basically saying it was a messy, unplanned jumble. And it was dangerous too. Fires were common because everything was wood, and people stored flammable stuff like tar, pitch, hemp, and even gunpowder right in their homes or warehouses along the River Thames. The riverfront was lined with rickety wooden wharves and buildings jutting out over the water, perfect for trade but a nightmare for fire safety. On top of that, London had just survived the worst plague in its history the year before, in 1665. That bubonic plague killed nearly 100,000 people, about a quarter of the population. Bodies were piled in mass graves, and the city was still recovering, with people scared, poor, and on edge. The relationship between the city folk and King Charles II was tense too. London had supported the Republicans during the English Civil War, so the king didn't fully trust them. He worried about rebellions. Add a long, hot, dry summer with no rain for weeks, and you've got a city that's basically a giant tinderbox waiting for a spark. Little did anyone know that spark was about to come from a simple bakery on Pudding Lane. What do you think? Could a city like that survive a big fire? Let's find out how it all started. It's just after midnight on Sunday, September 2nd, 1666. In a small bakery on Pudding Lane, owned by Thomas Farriner, something goes wrong. Farriner was the king's baker, supplying biscuits to the Navy, and he swore he'd put out his oven fire before bed as usual. But somehow a spark escapes, maybe from embers in the oven or a forgotten flame. The bakery catches fire quickly because it's full of dry flour, wood, and kindling. The flames spread to the upper floors where Farriner's family sleeps. They wake up in panic and escape by climbing out a window to a neighbor's roof. But tragically, their maidservant is too scared to follow, and becomes the fire's first known victim. She perishes in the blaze. By 1 a.m., the whole house is engulfed, and the fire jumps to nearby buildings. Pudding Lane is narrow, lined with overhanging wooden houses, so the flames spread easily. Neighbors try to fight it with buckets of water from the Thames, but it's no use. The easterly wind is strong, whipping the fire westward. By morning, several houses are gone, and the fire reaches the riverfront warehouses stocked with oil, brandy, and other combustibles. They explode, fueling the inferno. Lord Mayor Sir Thomas Bloodworth is woken up and rushes to the scene. People beg him to order the demolition of nearby houses to create a fire break, a common tactic back then. But Bloodworth hesitates. He says, "Pfft, a woman might piss it out," thinking it's no big deal, and goes back to bed. Historians later blame his indecision, but in fairness, demolishing houses meant compensating owners, and as a merchant himself, he might have worried about costs and politics. Plus, there was no organized fire department, just volunteers with leather buckets, hooks to pull down walls, and squirts, which were like primitive syringes for water. The fire keeps growing, and by dawn, it's clear this isn't a small blaze. Samuel Pepys, a government official and famous diarist, hears about it and climbs the Tower of London to see for himself. He writes that the fire is turning into a massive conflagration, already burning 300 houses. What if Bloodworth had acted faster? Could the fire have been stopped right there? Let's see how it exploded into chaos on that first day. By Sunday morning, September 2nd, the Great Fire is no longer just a bakery blaze, it's a raging monster. Driven by that strong easterly gale, the flames shoot westward along the Thames, consuming everything in their path. The fire reaches Fish Street Hill and threatens London Bridge, the only crossing over the river at the time, covered in wooden houses and shops. Luckily, A gap from a previous fire in 1633 stops it from fully crossing south, but the northern end burns fiercely. People start evacuating, throwing their belongings into the river or onto boats called lighters. The streets are clogged with panicked crowds, animals running loose, and pigeons fluttering in confusion. Some even have their wings singed off mid-flight. Samuel Pepys is right in the middle of it. He buries his wine, Parmesan cheese, and important papers in his garden to save them, then takes a boat on the Thames to get a better view. From the water, he sees the fire as an arch of above a mile long, with flames so hot they create their own wind, turning it into a firestorm. By afternoon, the blaze has spread 500 meters west, hitting Cannon Street and beyond. King Charles II, worried about the city, sails down the river with his brother James, Duke of York, to assess the damage. Pepys meets the king and urges him to order more demolitions, overriding the hesitant mayor. Charles agrees, but it's too late. The fire is out of control. Rumors start flying. Is this arson? With England at war with the Dutch and French in the Second Anglo-Dutch War, people suspect foreign saboteurs. Mobs attack immigrants, even lynching some. One Frenchman is beaten because he carried fireballs, which turn out to be just tennis balls. The chaos is real. Imagine the smoke choking the air, the roar of flames drowning out screams. How did people survive? Let's move to Monday when things get even worse. Dawn on Monday, September 3rd, brings no relief. The fire is bigger than ever. Overnight, it has leaped over gaps, fueled by the wind, and now spreads north into the heart of the city. Lombard Street, the banking district, is hit hard. Bankers rush to save their gold, melting in the heat, and cart it to safety. The Royal Exchange, a grand marketplace where merchants met, catches fire by late afternoon and burns to the ground. John Evelyn, another eyewitness, watches from across the river in Southwark and describes the whole city in dreadful flames near the waterside. All the houses from the bridge, all Thames Street, and upwards towards Cheapside, down to the 3 cranes, were now consumed. The flames are so intense that they melt bells in churches and lead from roofs, which flows like rivers in the streets. People flee to open spaces like Moorfields outside the city walls, setting up makeshift camps. The General Post Office burns, cutting off mail, and the printer of the London Gazette, the city's newspaper, loses his shop. Only one issue comes out during the fire, calling it the greatest calamity that ever befell this city. King Charles and James take charge, organizing bucket brigades and paying workers to demolish houses, but the wind keeps pushing the fire. A lesser-known fact: the fire jumps the River Fleet, a small tributary, outflanking defenses. By evening, it's threatening the western edges near Fleet Street. Refugees swell. Tens of thousands are homeless already. Pepys notes the pitiful sight. Everybody endeavoring to remove their goods and flinging into the river, or bringing them into lighters that lay off. Poor people staying in their houses as long as till the very fire touched them. The social divide shows. Wealthy folk hire help, while the poor carry what they can on their backs. What do you think it felt like to watch your life burn away? Tuesday brings the peak of destruction. Tuesday, September 4th, is the day of greatest devastation. The fire, now a massive wall of flame, breaches Cheapside, the city's main shopping street, lined with goldsmiths and fine shops. It moves eastward against the wind, a rare phenomenon caused by the heat creating its own drafts. The Tower of London is in danger, with its stores of gunpowder, 500 to 600 tons. The garrison, under orders from the king, uses that very gunpowder to blow up nearby houses, creating a massive firebreak that stops the eastern spread just in time. But westward, it's unstoppable. The fire jumps to St. Paul's Cathedral, the iconic heart of London. The cathedral was already under repair, wrapped in wooden scaffolding that acts like kindling. The flames hit around 8 p.m., and within half an hour, the lead roof melts, pouring down like rain, and the crypt full of books and papers erupts in a secondary blaze. Booksellers had stored their stock there thinking it safe, but millions of pages burn. Evelyn calls it a hideous noise and cracking and thunder of the impetuous flames. The Duke of York sets up command at Temple Bar, but the fire outflanks him. Rumors peak. People believe French or Dutch spies started it, or even Catholics plotting against Protestant England. A simple-minded French watchmaker, Robert Hubert, later confesses, falsely, to arson and is hanged, though he wasn't even in London at the start. Mobs roam, attacking foreigners. One Dutch baker is nearly lynched. By night, the sky is blood red, visible 50 miles away. Pepys climbs a church steeple and sees the saddest sight of desolation. Over 13,000 houses are gone by now, and the fire shows no sign of stopping. Could anything halt this beast? Wednesday brings a turning point. By Wednesday, September 5th, hope flickers. The easterly wind finally dies down, weakening the fire's drive. The fire breaks, wide gaps made by demolishing rows of houses with hooks, ropes, and gunpowder start to take effect. In the north at Pie Corner, the blaze is contained. To the west, near Holborn Bridge, soldiers hold the line. King Charles rides through the streets on horseback, encouraging fighters and handing out money from his own pocket. The fire peters out in pockets, though some hotspots smolder for days, even months in cellars full of coal. By Thursday, it's officially over, but the city is a smoking wasteland. Evelyn walks through the ruins. London was, but is no more. The devastation is staggering. 436 acres burned, 4/5 of the city within the walls. 13,200 houses destroyed, 87 parish churches, 44 livery company halls, the Royal Exchange, the Custom House, St. Paul's Cathedral, the Bridewell Palace Prison, and 3 city gates. The total value lost around 10 million in billions today. Miraculously, official deaths are low, only 6 recorded, including the maid and some elderly who refused to leave. But historians think it's undercounted. Many poor or vagrants likely perished, their bodies incinerated. Refugees, about 100,000, camp in fields like Moorfields, reduced to extremist misery and poverty, as Evelyn says. Tents and shacks spring up, and the king orders supplies from nearby counties. What caused such low deaths? The slow spread gave time to flee, unlike faster fires, but the human cost was immense. Let's explore the firefighting efforts that failed, and why. In 1666, fighting fires was basic and often ineffective. No fire engines or hoses, just leather buckets passed hand to hand from the Thames, long hooks to pull down burning walls, and squirts, like giant syringes shooting water. Parishes had some equipment, but it was scattered. When the fire started, locals formed bucket chains, but the heat was too intense, and water supplies ran low. Demolishing houses for fire breaks was the best method, but it required the mayor's approval, which Bloodworth delayed. Once the king stepped in, sailors from the Navy used gunpowder for bigger blasts, effective but dangerous, sometimes spreading embers. James, Duke of York, organized fire posts around the city, with constables and soldiers manning them. The king himself got dirty, passing buckets and rallying people, a lesser-known hero. The poor and prisoners were recruited, promised pardons or pay. But mistakes piled up. The initial hesitation, not evacuating fast enough, and letting rumors distract efforts. Social issues played a role. Tenants wouldn't leave without landlords' permission, fearing theft claims. Wind and dry weather did the rest. Compared to modern firefighting, it's night and day. What if they had today's tech? Would London have been saved? Now, let's hear from the eyewitnesses who brought this story to life. No one captured the Great Fire better than Samuel Pepys, a naval administrator whose diary is a treasure trove of details. On Sunday, he spots the fire from his home and thinks little of it at first. But by afternoon, he's alarmed, bearing his valuables. He writes vividly, "So near the fire as we could for smoke, and all over the Thames with one's face in the wind, you were almost burned with a shower of fire drops." Pepys meets the king, influencing decisions, and observes the human drama. Pigeons dying, people carrying sick relatives on their backs. His entries mix fear, curiosity, and everyday life. He eats a singed pigeon for dinner amid the chaos. Pepys's diary, written in shorthand and not published until the 19th century, gives us personal touches, like his worry over his cheese. Without him, we'd know far less. Other accounts, like John Evelyn's, add poetry. He describes the resemblance of Sodom, or the Last Day, with mountains of rolling smoke. A schoolboy, William Taswell, recalls the melting lead from St. Paul's running down the streets, in a stream, and the very pavements glowing with fiery redness. These stories humanize the disaster. Imagine journaling through apocalypse. What would you write? Let's turn to other key figures who shaped the response. King Charles II, often seen as a merry monarch, showed his mettle during the fire. Informed early, he overrode the mayor and ordered demolitions. He and his brother James patrolled the streets day and night, directing efforts, handing out gold coins to motivate workers, and even helping with buckets. Charles addressed crowds, promising no foreign plot and urging calm. After, he visited refugee camps, providing food and pledging rebuilding aid. His actions boosted his popularity, countering his playboy image. James, heir to the throne, commanded fire posts and was praised for bravery, but politics lurked. Charles feared rebellion, so he acted swiftly to maintain control. A fun fact, Charles had proposed widening streets before the fire, but was ignored. Now, the blaze gave him a blank slate. What do you think? Did the royals save the day, or was it luck? Next, the man who rebuilt London, Christopher Wren. Before the fire, he was already planning St. Paul's repairs. After he led the rebuild, just days later, Wren presented a grand plan. A new London with wide boulevards, piazzas, and a quay along the Thames, inspired by Paris and Rome. But it was too radical. Property owners wanted to rebuild on old plots quickly. Instead, the Rebuilding Act of 1667 mandated brick or stone buildings, wider streets, and no overhanging jetties. Wren designed 51 new churches, including the iconic St. Paul's Cathedral, with its massive dome, a masterpiece finished in 1710. He collaborated with Robert Hooke, who surveyed the ruins and built the monument, a 202-foot column marking the fire's start, the distance from Pudding Lane. Rebuilding took years, costing millions, funded by a coal tax. By 1670s, London was rising, safer and more modern. Lesser known, Wren hid a secret inscription in the monument blaming Catholics, later removed. How did this change London forever? Let's explore the destruction stats. The numbers are staggering. The fire razed 436 acres, 80% of the walled city, gone. 13,200 houses, housing 70,000, 80,000 people. 87 churches, 44 guild halls, prisons like Newgate, and key buildings like the Guildhall. Economic loss, 10 million, equivalent to 1.5 billion today. Trade halted, markets destroyed. Human toll, officially 6 deaths, but likely more. Bodies vaporized in the heat, or unrecorded poor. No mass starvation, thanks to royal aid, but 100,000 homeless endured winter in shacks. Disease-threatened camps. A positive? The fire ended the plague by killing rats and fleas, but the trauma lingered. Imagine losing everything. How would you rebuild your life? Now the wild theories behind the fire. From day one, rumors blamed arson. With war raging, fingers pointed at Dutch or French spies. Catholics were suspects too, amid anti-papist fears. Mobs attacked immigrants. A Swedish diplomat noted the violence. Robert Hubert, a French Huguenot, confessed to starting it with a fireball, but evidence showed he arrived after. A parliamentary inquiry blamed the fire on the hand of God upon us, a great wind, and the season so very dry. No proof of plot, but the monument originally inscribed blame on Catholics. Modern theories? Accidental from the bakery, though some speculate oven embers or spontaneous combustion. Fascinating. Comets seen in 1664-65 were omens to many. Why do disasters breed conspiracies? Let's see the refugee crisis. Tens of thousands fled to fields like Moorfields and Highgate, living in tents, barns, or open air. The king ordered bread, cheese, and beer from counties, and churches collected aid. Winter was harsh, but crime was low. By spring 1667, rebuilding began with temporary markets. Population dipped but rebounded. A lesser-known story. Quakers, persecuted before, helped with relief, gaining some goodwill. How resilient were Londoners? Their spirit shone through. The fire inspired art. Paintings by unknown artists show the blaze. Poems like John Dryden's Annus Mirabilis celebrate recovery. Nursery rhymes like London's Burning stem from it. Daniel Defoe's A Journal of the Plague Year touches on it. The monument and churches keep the memory alive. In literature, it's a symbol of destruction and rebirth. Modern films and books retell it. Fun fact, the fire appears in video games like Assassin's Creed. What stories endure from tragedies? Today, the Great Fire teaches us about building codes. London's brick mandate inspired global standards. Fire departments evolved from it. Comparisons to events like the 1871 Chicago fire or 2017 Grenfell Tower show ongoing risks. Climate change worsens wildfires. London's rebuild made it a world city. What can we learn? Plan ahead, act fast. The Great Fire destroyed but reborn London stronger. From ashes rose a brick city, Wren's masterpieces, and better safety. It's a tale of human error, heroism, and resilience. What do you think? Could it happen today? Comment below, subscribe for more history. Next, the Black Death. Fun fact, the bakery site is now a pub. Thanks for watching.